Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mark Nomad, and my buddy Don Odell had asked me to come and interview a very special artist today, and props out to Don for graciously affording a lot of us artists the opportunity to play our music here at Legends. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find out about Nikki Hill. And here
Very
she
cool.
is. I think maybe the first thing I would like to do, there's a couple of brief quotes that I saw that I thought touched upon your specialness. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, if Tina Turner and Little Richard had a daughter and raised her with the help of Uncle James Brown and Chuck Berry, she'd be like Nikki Hill. Now, that's, it oversimplifies, and it's pretty tall praise, but this woman lives up to that. And then another one from the Portland Monthly, because they get around, so they got press from all over the place. Hill is a petite powerhouse with a booming voice that is as sweet and luscious as it is gritty and raw. And I was going to mention, that you have the three S's, sweet, sassy, and when you scream, you have a very controlled, grittiness that is classic, and yet I think I congratulate you, because I think your band is not only carrying the torch for great music, but also showing the way forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So if you don't mind my asking you a few questions so you can fill in some
Yeah.
background information. I know that you grew up in North Carolina?
Right, yeah, I'm from Durham, North Carolina.
Durham.
Mm-hmm.
And are you folks are based in New Orleans now?
Yes, three of us live in New Orleans that are in the band, so that's where it usually kicks off on tour.
Excellent. Nikki, can you tell us a little bit about your household growing up, the kind of music that you grew up with?
Yeah, my parents were kids of the 70s, basically. I think that'd be the time where if they were doing any kind of hanging out and partying, it was a lot during that time. So my parents were split, but my dad lives in a little town called Efland. It's near like a Mebane, Hillsborough area, not very far from Durham, but it was definitely kind of getting the city vibe and the country vibe. It was like, a one stoplight town when I was there, as a kid, and used to play in this little graveyard behind this house that my dad rented, and he's a rock and roll fan, stuff like Creedence Clearwater, Chuck Berry, but he'd flip around on the radio and listen to stuff like that. And then of course, both my parents listened to a lot of soul and funk and, again, music of the 70s. So hearing a lot of those strong soul voices and rhythm and blues voices and stuff like that. And I also grew up singing in the church choir, which was more of a force than something I really asked to do. But, of course, I appreciate it so much more now. At the time, I was a little peeved as a kid having to go to rehearsal and all that stuff. But being on stage was really cool in front of these people that you could see how much the music touched them, the music and the feeling and the words and the vibe in the room and all of it coming together. I can't remember any of the sermons to save my life, but I can definitely remember the music. And so besides going to church and singing the choir as a kid, hearing Bobby Blue Bland and hearing Creedence, and then my sisters who are a bit older than me being more of that beginning MTV generation, I also heard a lot of how that pushed forward into a Whitney Houston type, or the beginnings of hip hop with A Tribe Called Quest or Salt and Pepper. I heard all of it. Whatever they were listening to, I listened to, and then eventually I started trying to find my own real interest. Of course, now I love soul music and listen to it every day, but when your parents are listening to it, then it's parents' music, you know what I mean? So I had a bit of an indifference with it at first, but then it of course later grew on me. But when I was trying to kind of find my way, and music is usually how you do that as a young person, you know. And I mean, I get really tight to different vocal groups. Like I listened to a lot of the Jackson 5, but then being a kid in the 90s, you'd end up hearing like Nirvana. You're like, man, this is different. This is really raw, and this is something my parents don't like, so I think I'm gonna like it for a minute, you know. So I got really into rock and roll and punk rock as a kid, you know, like 13 years old, and started finding my way around town, kind of hanging out with other people that like that kind of music, and started going to live shows. And that's when I think my music obsession really kicked off, was especially, I'm particularly attached to live bands, you know, and seeing, I mean, I obviously love recordings and love collecting albums and listening to them over and over again, but live shows capture such a special, unique moment that you only get at that one show. Whatever happens, whether that's good or bad or whatever, it's a moment, you know. So yeah, that's been kind of my trek along with music growing up.
Well, I must say I'm not surprised by anything that you shared with us, because first of all, it's very apparent that you enjoy live music, because you folks are a very live band.
Yeah, yeah.
And you are blessed with the gift of a voice that can sing pretty much any style with authority and authenticity. And a lot of people have to find you know, a style that suits them or their range. But
Yeah.
I have to say, you know, whether you're singing you know, rock and roll, rhythm and blues,
Yeah.
or blues, or
Yeah.
ballads, you're very comfortable with it, and you have the pliability in your voice to be able to cover all those genres.
Thank
Now, one of the
you.
things about the band that impressed me was, in many regards, it reminded me of a band from Memphis, and the reason I mention that is because when you think about Memphis as a hotbed of American music,
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, not only did you have, you know, the blues and Sun Records, and, you know,
Right.
B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf launched their careers from Memphis, as did Elvis
Right.
Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis. But then we have the Stax groups, you know, Booker
Right,
T and the
yeah.
MGs, Otis Redding, all those folks. And so, and your group can handle all those genres. I've heard you do rockabilly
Yeah,
too. You know,
yeah.
you have, so you pay homage to the masters, but
You
with a
have
tune
to.
like, and then I wanted to ask you about your process, your writing process. But the title track and the name, you know, of your album is most recent record, I believe, is
Yeah.
Heavy Hearts, Hard Fists.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about where the title comes from, and maybe your writing process.
Yeah, the title, you know, it's funny when you start talking about releasing the record and you do have to make all these decisions of which songs are you going to send out for people to play and feature, and which one is going to be the title of the record. Are you going to do something separate? And I'm such a scatterbrain, like just putting the songs together for me is like, okay, I've done this, why do I have to do anything else? You know, just put the record out. But you know, there is a process to it. But when I was writing that record, I mean, it was on the road, of course, because we've just been out constantly pushing and promoting ourselves and feeding ourselves and our families, you know. So when I was writing it, it was actually really cool this time, especially different from the debut album, where I was really kind of just saying, here I am, and you know, here's some of the stuff I love to do, and I was playing with writing and figuring it out. And the second record, I was able to use it actually more as a therapy, and to really write some stuff down, and to make some arrangements and work on some melodies. And while on the road, it's a trip, because you're constantly going back and forth.
Yeah,
You have to
that's
drop
tough.
it for a while to keep working. Because you know, I'm also the band leader, the label owner, the distributor of the first record, and
I resemble that.
so yeah, I mean, you have a lot of different responsibilities. So it was actually really nice to think about it for a moment and say, man, what am I putting out there? What am I trying to say? Or do I have a theme for this? And I don't necessarily have this goal of writing like heartbreak records or even happy records, or it's just really more again about the music and about expression. And so Heavy Hearts Hard Fists though was kind of a therapeutic song of thinking about some of the past things that I've been through, and it catered especially to relationships. You know, being a young woman that's or really anybody in general, if you've had your heart broken or you know anything like that, you've got something to say about it, I imagine. So that's a lot of what that song is about, of really being kind of crushed and being put down, but then there's a bit of a turnaround to it of it's still talking about looking back at it, like that's not where I'm at anymore. And so I thought that was pretty strong, and it sounded cool, so I put it on made it the title track, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's what that stands for, is you know, being held down, but then being able to fight back, and no matter how much time that takes, and really saying that it's okay to feel bad, it's okay to go through that, and then when you can recover, I mean, that's even better. So.
Yeah, sometimes no pain, no gain, right?
Exactly.
And it is a journey, and you're never too old to get your heart broken. I can attest to that, because I was relating to your parents' age. I'm probably right in their vicinity.
Right.
But one thing that I have said for many years, and that I keep doing, is music is so therapeutic. It's such a healing thing.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Big time.
Yeah.
It is the main thing consistently that I have found from being a young kid to now, that was, if there's anything that's held me together at times, it has been music. And the types of music I've listened to, you know, over time, it has evolved and changed, and then I've gone back to things that I stopped listening to, and I mean, even when Frank Sinatra has the same birthday as I do, and I don't know why that clicked into this
12/12,
obsession. Yeah.
Because my father has that birthday,
Great,
and
okay.
so does another
And
friend.
so I had, you know, actually like a long Frank Sinatra, and then started listening to all these other jazz artists, and man, I did that for a while, and it was bizarre, you know, being really young and like digging up these documentaries about these people, because it's a whole different world I didn't know about, just purely curious, you know. But I found even when I was getting older and feeling really hurt, there was something about turning on a Sarah Vaughan record, or even getting into instrumentals like Thelonious Monk or something like that.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, just laying back and falling deep into it, you know. And then rock and roll has that same therapy for me too, though, being able to crank a record up as high as you can, and just letting it surround you, letting the guitar just blast your ears, you know. There's just something about that and that space that you can get into by yourself, or, I mean, you can invite other people into it as well, which I think is what a lot of a live show is about. And I don't know, there's such a great feeling. I like to welcome other people into it too. So
Yeah, I definitely want to share
Yeah.
at times. Most of the time, you want to share